Hello.
How's it going? How's everyone doing?
I'm so excited to be here.
Hi everyone, welcome to the final panel of the day. We're gonna call it the most fun one of the day. This is the influencer panel, and I'm joined with three amazing women that are all making great impact in their own industries. And I'm just gonna do and then we're going to get right into it. This conversation is going to be focused all about how we show up online and as influencers, how you can grow and connect with your audience. So first up, I have Praveeni, who is a blogger and influencer based in Ottawa, Canada. And she runs a blog and account called The Weekend Fashionista. And she also works full-time as an international trade professional and also teaches, which is super cool. And you all can wave so people know who you are. So we have Shakera Martin, who is the founder of Carnival Spice and also a movement coach and wellness entrepreneur that is basically looking to help aspiring artists of color be welcomed on a platform where they can further develop skills in Caribbean dance. So if there are any Caribbean dance or soca fans, Shakera is your person. And last but not least, we have Yaa, who is the founder of and CEO of FemBnB, which is the first social networking vacation and short-term rental platform that allows women to rent their spaces to other women in hopes to maximize safety, comfort, and peace of mind. So I think we have a great panel. So I'm super happy that all of you are here today. For those of you who are here, feel free to leave your questions in the chat box, but let's just jump right in. Let's jump right in. Everybody knows everybody, so let's start. So I had the opportunity to talk to all of you at different points and, following a lot of your journeys in being bloggers and impacting people online and growing your brand. So I wanted to really start this conversation around authenticity. And I know this is a buzzword right now. Everyone's talking about, be authentic, show up as yourself. The whole idea of, people wanting to flock to celebrities who have lives that are honestly for many of us very unrelatable. And the onset of influencers becoming really something that our audiences and communities really want to support. But with that, when you're starting a brand, you're building a brand, many people can be tempted to follow trends or what's viral because you're coming online and everybody likes the likes, everybody likes the comments on their posts, and it can be very easy for us to fall into not showing up as our true selves. So I wanted to kind of dive into that authenticity piece of being online. And this is for all of you to answer. So my first question to you is, how did you build your brand? We can start with Praveeni.
Well, when I started my blog, I actually started it because my coworkers kept asking me, where do you get your outfits? And I wanted to share it with them, but also share it with the broader audience. And as a person, I've never really been one that has done a lot of those social media challenges. So for me, it was something that was very natural. It came very naturally to me. And I just shared my own personal style. And I knew that it's not for everybody. So my style is very classic and feminine. May not be for everybody, but that's okay. And I think it really comes down to accepting who you are and your brand and being okay with the fact that not everybody, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but also, sharing yourself in a way that's representative of you. And for me, as a professor, there are certain challenges and things on Instagram that I don't participate in because I'm also conscious of my professional life aside from, my life on social media. So that's really how I kind of thought about it.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned your role in education, how that also influences what you do in terms of showing up and the type of things that you post. And for you, you also have a nonprofit where you're mentoring a lot of youth. So maybe you can also chime in on how you've been able to organically and authentically build your brand when you're not only focusing on the work that you do at FemBnB and as a mompreneur and working in tech, but how has that been for you?
Well, I mean, building a brand online right now has been, I would say, a journey. I actually started on Facebook initially, and Facebook was where a lot of people were seeing some of the work that I do with youth in Toronto and some of the work that I do in Ghana. So, I mean, everything has kind of moved to Instagram for now. So with Instagram, I'm very intentional as to what I actually post online. So, I mean, in terms of, I'm not a fashionista, so that's not my, like, that would be not, that's not my, I would say, my area. However, I do focus a lot on mentorship and a lot about really putting some good information out there for you to really, take the gems, or anybody that's following to take the gems. So I'm very intentional. So I normally would post maybe some of my speaking engagements, some of the work that I do, as well as even some of my mentorship programs I will post on there. And I also love to travel. So aside from mentorship, aside from Hands of a Hero, I have FemBNB. I'm a woman in tech, and I've been in tech for the past 10 years. So I do post certain things about tech, even some conferences that I do attend, to kind of also, for me, that's also a type of content that I put out there. And for me, I sort of do, I call it indirect mentorship, right? Because you're not necessarily mentoring someone in person. It could, with social media, even as an influencer, you're mentoring someone without even you actually realizing it. So I'm very, very intentional as to what I put out there. And even though I do love travel, I post about certain things about travel to let people also know, hey, I'm not just, a mentor. I also love to travel. I post about my kids, my family. So I'm kind of also, balance all that together. So that's how I essentially kind of stay active and influence some of the people that follow me online.
Yeah, huge. And I wanted to direct this question to Shakera, because you're in an industry where the TikToks and all of the trends are a thing. And you've not only, built a brand around Caribbean dance, but you've been able to help other artists. And I've seen many dancers come through your classes and become trainers and be a part of your community. So what was that like, not only starting Carnival Spice and, being a mentor to other dancers that are interested in, sharpening their skills in the dance form? How did you do that, and how do you stay authentic?
Ooh, that's loaded. Well, just off the bat, my general philosophy is lead with passion and energy. It's that simple. That's my starting ground. So essentially, my audience has found me just by the positive information, the resources, and the value that I've put out with my content. And then narrowing it down to Carnival Spice and the work that I do there. Representation was a really big thing for me. So I'm very passionate about providing a platform for artists of color. And, that came from just my early days and my time as a girl being a dancer and trying to get the footing in an industry was already underdeveloped, not really getting the support and resources that it deserved. But now someone that looks like me added a whole layer of additional barriers, and really navigating that system and getting to where I am now. The only other option was to support other artists that look like me in particular, because I've been there. I know what I needed then. So now I'm able to apply that and offer that to other people. And it's not only rewarding for me, but I just love having the opportunity to uplift and empower my community.
Yeah, and I love it. I think you all really have figured out what your niche is and who you serve, and that really influences the type of content that you post and what trends you get on and who you partner with and collaborate with. I know there's quite a bit of awesome collaborations within this group of us alone. So I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about, we're starting, a lot of people who are out there who might want to start a brand, or they're looking to be an influencer. And one major question that I get, and you've probably heard as well, is how do I monetize this? And how do I choose who I collaborate with and what type of brands that I align myself with? So you all have done a really great job of figuring out what your message is, who your audience is, and what your voice is, and coming into that. But what has been your experience in terms of collaborations and really being true to who you are as an influencer, what your messaging is, and who you will collaborate with, and maybe who you won't? And maybe, you can start us off. I know you collaborate with hosts, and you probably have collaborations with the work that you do in tech. So
so thank you for that question, actually. So collaboration is a very strategic way of really building your brand, right? You have to be very, of course, intentional. You have to be able to kind of figure out, okay, this person, am I collaborating with them to, benefit from, or am I collaborating them for me to give them all what I have, basically? So essentially for me, we reach out to several women, when I'm talking about FemBNB, several women organizations that focus on travel essentially, and really know, okay, if we're able to collaborate together, how do we both benefit each other, right? It's not just a one way, give. It has to be both beneficial to both of the partnership. And not every partnership is actually good, right? Not every partnership is actually viable for your business, will actually allow your business to scale. So for us, I'm very intentional who I actually contact. And I go in with the notion that I have something to give, right? Not me going with the notion that, okay, you have something to give me. So I think when I go in with that mindset, it actually opens up a lot more opportunities for us to talk about different partnership ideas, how we can both benefit from each other. So it's really about, being intentional, as well as, of course, being authentic, being yourself, and really showing who you are and what your brand stands for, and making sure that your values also matches with that partnership that you're going into. Because it could, maybe the values do not align, and in the future, it may actually hurt your brand as well. So.
Yeah, and I love that you touched on it, as not only looking at these brand deals as, you asking for a favor, but realizing what your value as an influencer, no matter how many followers you have or how large your audience is. And I know, Praveeni, you talked about your work in education and how a lot of what you do in your daytime work actually influences the type of things that you do share or the type of brands that you do partner with. And I know Shakera and yourself both are bloggers, so you're kind of on the other side of it sometimes, where you're content creators and there might be people that are reaching out to you that want to be showcased on your platforms. How do you navigate that? And we can start with Praveeni.
I think to add to Yaa's points, it's very important that you actually offer something in return, and look at it from the perspective of what can I actually offer to this brand or this business. I think that's something that's extremely important, whether you're an influencer, you're a blogger, or whether you just, some sort of an Instagram personality. And for me, I think I always like to look at myself as a whole person. And I think, yes, I have this, a life on Instagram, but I also have a responsibility to my students and to my profession, that to represent myself in the best light. So I always, when I get an offer from a brand, I always think, is this something that is going to be detrimental to me in the future in terms of my personal brand and then me professionally? And I also think about my audience, right? So a lot of my students do follow me. I have a lot of international students, and I get a lot of questions. What should I wear to my interview? But it's my first winter here in Canada. Can you please tell me where to shop? And then they'll somehow Google me and find me on Instagram, and I don't follow me. But I'm very conscious of what I post to make sure that the message that I'm giving and presenting is positive, and then it aligns with not only my own values, but the values of my workplaces as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Shakera, you have some really cool partnerships that you've done working with, was it the Housewives that you were on?
Oh, that was, yeah, the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Yeah. Wow, that still blows my mind till this day, because like in that case, for example, the audience was as far as like 2.5 million per episode. So like, it's just wild. And something like that, thank you for mentioning that. In that moment, not only did I get to represent my company and my business and myself, but I was representing Caribbean culture. Like that was a specific offering that I was doing at the time, and I got to represent Toronto. Like the Housewives came to Toronto, and I got to share with them our secrets and excitements and all of that. So with that being said, any deal or partnership or work opportunities that come my way, I look at it through two different mindsets. One, the business side of things, as the ladies have already mentioned, is there an exchange there? Can I add value to them? Can they add value to my company, right? And then there's the community side of things, where it's, okay, here is my audience. What can this partnership do to support my audience, whether it's their health, their wellness, their socialization, their joy, and will it be positive? Is it aligned with my views, and therefore, or not my views, my values rather, and will, again, that positively influence how my audience receives it.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think all of you really touched on the importance of, knowing what you bring to the table, knowing, the values of the brand and whether that's in alignment with what you want to do. And I love that you touched on that, Shakera, about how is this going to actually benefit my audience and the community that I'm serving as well. Whereas I can probably say for most of us, if not all of us on the call, we have audiences that we are, coming from as a place of serving, solve problem, create community around a subject matter. And I think I can speak for myself as well when I'm thinking about brand partnerships, is really thinking about how does that align with the goal of, what I want to present to my audience, and also is it in alignment? So I love that you all touched on that. I love that we're all just on the same page. Isn't that great? Different industries, but we're all on the same page. And to that note, when we talk about being in partnerships with brands align with our values and being very authentic, I wanted us to talk a little bit about the dark side of influencers and that authenticity and transparency. And I think many of us have probably experienced what I like to call the celebrity syndrome, where the celebrity looks like they're the most amazing person on the TV or in the movie, but when you meet them, it's a completely different experience. And I think what I wanted us to talk about is, how do you balance who you are online and what that day-to-day is? And I know sometimes it can be kind of difficult to always want to show up as a certain, version of yourself online. But when someone bumps into you at a grocery store, like it's almost like turn that on again. So what has been your experience in balancing the real life and social media life and keeping those as cohesive and fluid as possible? And anyone can jump in. Who feels
I'll go first. I'll go first because I know that I'm a work in progress in that area. It's, it's so easy to say, hey, you should separate the two. But when, 50% of your work or majority of your work in most cases is spent on social media, those lines do get blurred often. And in full transparency, like today was a hard day to show up on social media, especially with the news of the lockdown yesterday. That has really impacted my day-to-day activities, my clients' lives, my family life. So it's just been an adjustment. But having a real focus on your why and having a why in general on why you do what you do really gives you that fire to push forward and move forward and not only show up for your clients, but show up for yourself. It's so important to keep that as your top priority. Why are you doing this? Are you trying to impact? Are you trying to change lives? Are you trying to just bring joy? Are you trying to see the betterment in others shine through? Like whatever it is, are you trying to provide for your family? There's a variety of reasons, right? But for me, that's how I move forward. And then challenge myself with time management skills, like making sure that I'm spending a healthy amount of time on the internet, because that's something, that's a skill. Whoever has that skill mastered, shout out to you. But really just being mindful of that as well, along with just putting out great content.
Yeah. And maybe Praveeni, you want to chime in on this one?
Sure. I also think, as people with a following, any type of following, you just have to be really conscious about what you put out there. And I'm a big believer in this quote, and it says, if you see somebody without a smile, give them one of yours. So I know it sounds hard. I really believe that. And especially now with everything that's going on. I mean, we all have our own struggles and things like that, but I try to make a really conscious effort not to, bring too much of that to my Instagram audience, because I think, do I really want to be remembered as the person that made this negative comment? If someone takes, one negative comment or one negative thing, or, you having a bad day, I try not to project that onto my audience, because I think it's not their fault I'm having a bad day. I'm just having a bad day.
Right.
But they may be having a fabulous day, and I have absolutely no right to take that away from them. Right? So that's sort of how I approach it. And it is challenging sometimes. Sometimes you really don't want to do photos, especially when it's really cold, because here in Ottawa, winter's a brutal. So full disclosure, you will see some holiday content. I'm in a cocktail dress. I was freezing, but I'm smiling for the cameras. And I always tell people, I said, in reality, it's like -2, but here I am smiling because I want you to see what this looks like. I think just tell them, you share a little bit of it, but I always try to keep it positive, not fake, but positive. You know, we can always find something positive in everything.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And yeah, do you have any insight?
I think I think, you know, everybody touched on some good points in terms of, you know, balance and stuff like that on social media, and, you know, putting out content as much as you can. For me, yeah, I'm very intentional. I'm very specific as to what I put out there. But at the same time, I also want people to know that I am human, right? If I'm going through some crazy times sometimes. I had a crazy meeting one time that didn't go really well. I put up, I'm like, I've been screaming all day and my husband told me to calm down, right? So sometimes it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to, you know, open up, but there has to be also boundaries, right? There has to be boundaries that has to be set. And that is something that, you know, now it's been blurred, you know, even with celebrities. Some people think they need to put everything out, but it should not be like that. I think there should still be some boundaries that you set for yourself and also for your brand. And also, you know, I feel like it's okay to take a break from your passion. It's okay to, you know, say, hey, I need time off, right? Sometimes we're on that hustle, bustle, that move, like, oh my God, I need to hustle for this money, I need to continue to do this. But we have to take time away to really reflect, to really recharge. Especially social media can be really stressful. You know, go on a vacation, you know, turn off your phone for some days. It's hard, but for me, I've done it several times. Even this week, I hardly posted because I was busy with other things. So it's okay for me to take a break from social media. And that's one of my thing this year, like with so many things going on, at least, you know, sometimes let me have that self-care away from social media. So,
yeah. I absolutely love that you touched on it, because I think as content creators, it can become so easy for us to get into that hamster wheel, especially when we know that our audiences are there and they're waiting for that next piece of content and that next story and that next live. And it can be almost like we feel like we have that responsibility, so we have to show up. So I love that you touched on that, you know, it's also equally important for us to take a break so that we can show up as the best versions of ourselves. So I love that you put that into it, because it's not easy showing up online and being consistently and doing the hashtags and posting how many times a day that all of these people are telling us we need to do. So it's definitely not easy. So I can speak for myself, and I see everyone is nodding that it is a lot.
3 stories, 2 reels, 1 IGTV, 7 days a week. Like, I get it.
I have even IG guides. Like, IG guides just came out yesterday. Like, give us a break. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it's just giving ourselves that ability to take a break and take a pause and know that we're doing it so that we can show up as the best versions of ourselves. So you all are so insightful. You really are. You really are. You have I'm so excited for this conversation, and you all are doing amazing, and this is really fun. So I'm glad that we're all here. So I wanted to kind of segue us into the number one thing that people are always asking when it comes to being an influencer. And I know all of you have amazing communities and brands. You've built your audiences. Growing your audience. That's the number one question. Even I get, I'm sure most of you get, is like, oh, how did you get to this many people? Or how did you get this many people to support your business or your blog or your initiative? And I guess the number one thing I want to ask is if you could give one tip in learning your audience and how you want to interact with them to attract that audience, what would be your recommendation? So how have you been able to learn your audience and create content that makes more people want to circle around what you do? And I'll start with Praveeni, because you talk a lot about, you know, having a lot of your audience not even being local to Ottawa. So I'd love you to start out the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's important to definitely look at those Instagram analytics and see where your audience is, but also don't get so hung up on trying to get an audience from a particular city or a particular demographic, you know, region. And I think, you know, people are going to, if they like what you're posting, people are going to follow you. And you really need to appreciate those people. You need to in some ways, cater to that following. They're the people that showed up for you first, so you need to show up for them as well. And from my own experience, I was born in Sri Lanka, and I moved here when I was 5, so a while ago. And I've gotten a lot of support from the South Asian community in Toronto, in Colombo, where I was born, you know, all over the world. And I'm very thankful for that support. And at one point I was thinking, okay, I need more followers in Ottawa. I need more followers in Ottawa. But I said, well, these guys have been with me from the beginning. They are the ones that sort of kept me going in the beginning. So I really do need to recognize them. And I think it's important to go where the followers are, because those are the people that are engaging. They're the ones that are sharing. They're the ones that are going to tell their friends, right? So just not to get hung up on a specific geographic region, but definitely use those analytical tools that Instagram gives us. You know, look at your followers, look at their age range, look at, you know, men versus women and different posting times, and just, you know, go where the followers are. Don't get so hung up on finding followers in one region.
Yeah, I love that you touched on that. And I'd love to move over to Shakera, because I think what you're talking about, Praveeni, about not having your audience necessarily be local and not being necessarily a local hero, but you're making impact worldwide. With That's from alone, Shakera, you're touching many different countries across the diaspora. And I'm curious to know if you found in your experience when you were growing your brand and growing, did you find that, you know, a lot of people locally were supporting you, or did you find that you had a lot more people that were interested from other countries? Like, how did you grow the brand?
It was, I want to use the word experiment, because everything you learn as you go. This industry, this influencing industry in that technical term is new, right? So everything is an adjustment. Everything is a learning experience. Starting out, of course, local audience was my focus, because that's what I knew, that's what I saw. And then boom, you start meeting or you gain clients or audience members from around the world, and you're like, wow, like the internet is that wide? Like when they say World Wide Web, they meant it. And then you just, you know, to really answer the question, it's consistency, showing up, whether it's for 5 people, whether it's for 500 people, it doesn't matter the size of your audience, you have to show up. You can't expect, you know, your audience to want to show up for you when you're posting once a week, you know, or if you have a blog and you're posting once every 6 months. That's unreasonable, right? If you are an influencer or a leader, or, you know, you have a platform, a responsibility is to share content, share information, give value, and that's why people will come back. I have a very niche audience in regards to my carnival spice side of things. So, you know, carnivals happen all year. But when I started, I thought, okay, let me talk to the Toronto Carnival people, in many cases, Caravana. And then growing my horizons and understanding that my information can be shared worldwide, I really shifted my systems and my strategies to share with the world. And, you know, a technical part can be in hashtags. That's something that someone can take home with them. You know, hashtags is a very important way to not only find your audience, but find people that you want to work with, brands you want to work with, etc. And also other leaders in your industry. That's another great way to find your people, or share your content by connecting with others who are ultimately doing the same thing or similar work.
To you. Yeah, and I love that you touched on those technical tools, so like using those hashtags. I would also add in geotags. So something that I've been doing is when you want to expand out your reach, using those geotags on your social media as like a foreshadowing. So I can use myself as an example. I go to Atlantic, the other way Atlantic, getting them on my live, using a geotag. So kind of think about when expansion and growing your audience, where do you want to show up next, and start engaging with those people too. So I love, like, it's kind of piggybacking off of what you both said about going where the followers are, going where the people are generally interested. And there's one note that you mentioned, Shakera, about, you know, showing up consistently. And I know that I had a side conversation with Yaa about this, about not only showing up consistently, but when we do take those breaks, or, you know, there's a few days that we don't post, how do we ensure that when we do show up, it's with impact? And maybe you can talk about that, Yaa, because you do a lot of mentorship.
Yeah, definitely. I can talk about that. So yeah, so if you do go away for a very long time, I think it's ideal, or it's reasonable for you to kind of explain to your audience, okay, you know what, I've been away. So you don't have to, of course, go into details, but at least let them know you've been away, because I'm sure that most of them are looking for content from you. But for me, like in terms of FemBnB, we post consistently, even if we don't post on the feed. We do post on the story. We do our tags, even in the stories, hashtags and all that stuff. But one thing I think I would say, if you're building your brand, we have to also realize that, social media, for example, Instagram, it's not ours, right? Even though we're building a platform on it, it is not our own platform. So any way that you can actually attain some contacts, build an email contact, or even build some newsletters contact that you're able to kind of keep in touch with your audience, aside from Instagram and also aside from Facebook or aside from LinkedIn, I think that would be, it's great for anybody to do that, because you're able to actually, just in case anything happened, one day, there's no more Instagram, to be able to still connect with your audience off social media. And I mean, a lot of people don't think about that, but I think that it's something that, if you're building a brand, you should also kind of keep in mind that I need to build my audience off Instagram and social and Facebook and all that stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. So I love that. So we're talking about connecting with your audience online, connect outside of the online platforms. And this has been an amazing, amazing, amazing panel. That is our time, but thank you all for giving those tangible tips that people can, take away from this. All of their social media handles in the chat. And yeah, thank you all for being here. Thank you for sharing your insights, your journeys, and what people can kind of think about when they're looking to influence their audience. You all have been amazing.
Thank you
for having us.